How did the Rangers win that game?
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1179 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers go on the road against Detroit. They beat the Red Wings for the third time in as many tries this season, and they somehow, against all odds, post a 4-0 shutout victory, despite honestly playing kind of similarly to how they've been playing in this recent stretch, which obviously has not been good. If you go back the last 5 or 6 games, maybe even 7 games, you're seeing a team that either wins ugly and wins in spite of all the mistakes that it's making, and basically almost solely because of the play of their goaltender, usually Igor Shesterkin, but on this night it was Jonathan Quick. And you're also seeing a team that, when it loses, all the warts are very well exposed for all of us to see very clearly. And they honestly were, like I said, in this game as well. I asked just a second ago, right at the top of the episode here, before the new intro song there, how did the Rangers win this game? Well, I know the answer, and the answer is Jonathan Quick. There were a couple other things that maybe we can pinpoint as well. And we're going to talk about some of the things that the Rangers didn't do so good in this game because, again, that 4-0 final, I don't want to be too negative. It is a 4-0 win. You have to take the 2 points and move on. And obviously, the season is still just getting started. We are still in the first quarter for sure. But, yeah, I don't know. There's some bad habits that are creeping in that are showing themselves more often than certainly you would like thus far in the season. But let's start with the biggest positive of this game, and that was, of course, Jonathan Quick. Absolutely phenomenal. I would feel better just in general about a win like this for the Rangers if this was kind of like the exception to the rule rather than the rule itself, where you can look at a game like this and say, wow, we played bad, but we found a way to win. Unfortunately, that's kind of what the formula has been. And also part of the formula is, of course, like I mentioned just a second ago, the stellar play of your goalie, basically bailing you out and erasing all your mistakes. And that's what Jonathan Quick did in this game. Jonathan Quick comes through with a big-time 37-save shutout, just partying like it's 2012 over here. Absolutely awesome. His biggest save of this game to me, it wasn't his best save. He made some highlight reel, unbelievable saves pretty much throughout this entire game. But to me, his most important save of this game, and we'll talk about it in greater detail in a little bit here, it was the first save that he made. The Red Wings got a rush in the first 30 seconds or whatever it was of the game, and he made a big-time save to keep the puck out of the net and keep the game scoreless, obviously. Because if he lets that goal in there, there could be a little bit of a here we go again kind of a feeling for this team, especially when you consider that that's exactly what happened in the most recent game. The Rangers gave up a very early goal and obviously got just smacked by the Sabres in the most recent game. So it was big time that Quick made that save there. As far as like his best save of the night, take your pick. There's a lot of strong candidates here. Stoning Vladimir Tarasenko from point blank range was very impressive. Not too long after that, he sprawls out to deny Patrick Kane on the rush. He was able to get his glove on it and get the puck out of harm's way. And then you've got Miller and Trouba. They leave Kane wide open on the right side of the ice, and the Red Wings work the puck over to Kane. Quick is able to close the pads, keep the puck out of the net, and freeze the puck. And a lot of these saves, this is equally as important. They came at a time when the game was either scoreless or when the Rangers were up 1-0. So he's not only making phenomenal saves, but he's doing it in a spot where he absolutely needs to do it. He's seeing how his teammates are playing, and obviously he knows that he's got to be at the top of his game, and indeed he was. I'm going to say, though, I think his best save of the night was the blocker save that he made against Bergeron. He was moving to his right. Red Wings on one of their 312 different odd man rushes on the night. They get a pass over to Bergeron, and Quick moves hard to his right, gets his blocker out, gets a piece of it, and keeps the puck out of the net. Just a phenomenal save. Quick, you could tell, really wanted the shutout on this night, and stepped up big when his team obviously needed him to essentially carry them, and that's exactly what he did. And I got to reference this stat from Steve Valiquette and Clear Sight Analytics. He does this every game. It's a chart of basically scoring opportunities for each team. It charts, low danger scoring opportunities, medium danger scoring opportunities, and high danger scoring opportunities. And then it all adds up to an expected goal total for each team. And for Steve Valiquette's Clear Sight Analytics, the number they came up with for the Rangers as far as expected goals for the Rangers in this game was 1.99. And that stat, of course, does not include the empty netter, so that the empty netter is irrelevant. 1.99 expected goals for the Rangers. And the Red Wings had an expected goals for of 3.51. So Jonathan Quick basically bailed the Rangers out of about 3.5 worth of goals in this game. Just a stellar performance. So again, very clearly the biggest reason why the Rangers won this game was indeed Jonathan Quick. To me, there was a second reason why the Rangers won this game, and that's the goals that they scored basically out of nowhere in the second period. For all the struggles that the Rangers had in this game, you got to give them some props for at least closing the second period strong. I thought they played better in the third period as well, but being opportunistic, a couple of those kind of quick strike goals that basically came out of nowhere. You had Zach Jones carrying the puck up the left side. He lost the puck. He's able to get it back, and then he passes behind the net to Sam Carrick. Carrick then passes in front to Jimmy Vesey, and Vesey scores from the doorstep to make it 2-0. About 3 minutes to go in the second period, and Vesey with a well-deserved first goal of the season for him. I think he's mostly played well. I believe this is only his third game back, but Vesey, just strengthening that fourth line, which honestly has been, I think, a really solid part of this Ranger team thus far in the season. We're going to have to spend some more time on them in the next couple of episodes here because the fourth line has really played well. We also, not too long after this, we got Lafreniere passing around the boards to Mika Zibanejad, and Mika takes the pass right behind the net there. He's moving, out one side of the net, and he passes across to the other side of the net, across the top of the crease to Artemi Panarin, and he scores from the doorstep to make it 3-0. I'd be pulling my hair out if I was a Detroit Red Wings fan for most of this game in general, but this sequence in particular had to be just absolutely infuriating because you just watched your team basically skate circles around your opponent the entire night, down by a goal, but seemingly about to, score a couple of your own. And it just doesn't happen because you've got this 38-year-old goalie who's standing on his head. And then just like that, at the end of the period, you give up 2 goals like that, both somewhat out of nowhere. I mean, obviously the Rangers had the puck in the offensive zone, but these were quick strikes that you didn't really feel like they were coming. You guys know those extended offensive zone possessions where it feels like a goal is on the way. That wasn't really the case here, but I guess give the Rangers at least some credit once again for being opportunistic and taking advantage of, a couple of the very few opportunities they were able to create in this game. So Jonathan Quick, he's the man, absolutely fantastic, and give him props for honestly, probably seeing the way the Rangers have been playing recently and knowing, okay, I got to be on my toes because we're giving up a ton of odd man rushes. We're giving up a ton of shots on goal, and we're not really doing much on the forecheck. We're kind of back on our heels for a lot of these games. I'm sure Jonathan Quick was very well aware of that and was ready to go, maybe even more so than usual due to those circumstances coming into this game. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. We've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but I do want to highlight the Rangers with another poor start to his game just once. It's happened so infrequently this season, despite the fact that the Rangers do have a good record. It's happened so infrequently this season where the Rangers just hit the ground running. You could count very easily on one hand. You might only need, it might only be once or twice the entire season, honestly, where you can look at the Rangers start to a game and say, that was really good. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. We're also going to talk a little bit later about the Rangers needing to do something different as far as the defense pairings are concerned. So we'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate is not to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with quality candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed data survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we're going to go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, for obviously staying with this show throughout the entire season, postseason, offseason, the whole 9 yards. You guys are the best. In our next episode, we're going to go ahead. We're going to have some Ranger-centric themes in the next episode for sure, but one thing I definitely want to hit on here is that the Hartford Wolfpack have chosen Casey Fitzgerald as their new captain. Going to discuss that selection in the next episode. And like I said, certainly some other Ranger-centric themes as well. But for right now, I want to once again just highlight, the fact that the bad starts for the Rangers, I shouldn't say that they're killing the Rangers because they're really not. The Rangers continue to win in spite of them, or they've mostly won in spite of them, but it's an issue. And you're doing this up against teams that aren't really that great. That's another thing to kind of consider here. Rangers do have a good record. If you just look at their record, okay, everything's fine. They haven't really gotten to the meat and potatoes of their schedule yet. I mean, they played the Panthers. They obviously lost them. They did beat the Maple Leafs. That's obviously a quality team. They've got the Jets next. That's going to be a big one. They're like 14-1 or whatever they are at this point. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of beating up on not so good teams, or at least teams that we don't think are really that good. It is still early in the season to tell for sure. But yeah, I mean, they're getting it done. They're getting the points, but it's worth noting they haven't really played, the super heavyweights, at least not yet. But again, the bad starts here. First, we got to mention the lines really quickly. They did put the third line back together, the line that I've really, really been hoping would be put back together. Cooley, Hedl, and Kakko. Their stretch of not allowing a goal against the entire season continues. Obviously, they got the shutout here, so nobody allowed a goal, but they've been great. They still have Mika with Panarin and Lafreniere, and they did link up for a pretty impressive goal that made it 3-0 late in the second period. We'll give them that at least. And they've got Trocheck with Kreider and Smith, but you're just not seeing enough offense, enough, quality, dangerous-looking scoring opportunities for really either one of these lines. And honestly, if it's up to me, I'm flip-flopping them back. I'm going Trocheck with Panarin and Lafreniere, and I'm going Mika with Kreider and Smith. But those were your lines to start this game. But you look at the start that the Rangers had to this game. It's another slow one, obviously. The first period wasn't as bad as the second period, but it clearly was not ideal. You're playing a team here in the Detroit Red Wings that is on the second game of a back-to-back. They lost in Toronto 3-1 the previous night. Now they got to fly back to Detroit and, obviously get ready to go. So you would think that the Rangers, who since Monday, Monday through Saturday, played a grand total of 2 games, you would think they would have a little bit more jump than a team that's playing the second game of a back-to-back and, again, had to fly home from Toronto to Detroit. I'm not sure. I'm not always the best with geography. I'm not exactly sure how long of a flight that is, but bottom line, they played the second game of a back-to-back, and they had more jump, and they played with more edge and just more energy in the early goings, really throughout just about all of this game. I think the third period was at least a little bit more even, but the first 2 periods, the Red Wings clearly, I thought, had more jump than the Rangers. So, and one more thing that I should point out on the subject of back-to-backs, the Rangers still haven't played one. They don't play their first back-to-back of the season until the very end of this month. I want to say it's like the 29th and the 30th, but they've played other teams that are playing on the second game of a back-to-back, and maybe in some situations have to use their backup goalie. How is it possible that the Rangers, who don't really have that dense of a schedule, so consistently look like they don't get off to as good of a start as teams that are playing a lot more frequently than they are? Again, some cases, including last night's game, in the second game of back-to-back, that's a question that I think needs to be answered at a certain point here. But another stat that I got to throw at you guys here that kind of emphasizes the slow start by the Rangers in this game. Detroit came into this game averaging barely 24 shots on goal per game. That is the worst in the NHL, dead last. And in this game, and part of it, again, is to the fast start from Detroit and the slow start by the Rangers, they end up with 37 shots on goal. They outshoot the Rangers 37-24, including 27-14 in the first 2 periods combined. So a lot of stats that don't look good. And again, they just kind of leave you scratching your head and wondering, how did this team win this game 4-0? Again, the short answer is Jonathan Quick. But, you look at the start of this game, the amount of dangerous odd man rushes that the Rangers were allowing was absolutely staggering. They start this game with the Miller-Trouba pairing and Lafreniere, Mika Zibanejad, and Artemi Panarin. 20 seconds into the game, you've got the Wings zipping into the Ranger zone through the neutral zone. Somebody went right around Lafreniere like he was standing still. And then Trouba and Miller let DeBrincat go right up the middle to the net, and he receives a pass, and Quick robs him on the doorstep. That's the save that I was talking about earlier. We were talking about Jonathan Quick that I wanted to highlight a little bit later. This is the biggest save that Jonathan Quick made on this night. You cannot, for the second game in a row, after coming off of your worst game possibly in years against the Buffalo Sabres, you cannot allow a goal in the first minute. The Rangers that were on the ice, the skaters, they did everything possible to make sure that that's exactly what happened. Jonathan Quick was having none of it. And like I said, that Quick has been watching this team recently. He's probably well aware that he's got to be on his toes in the early goings, and he was, and that was obviously a huge save there. But the Rangers starts to the other periods weren't really a whole lot better. You look at the second period and the third period, same five players. Again, the Miller-Trouba pairing and the we'll call it the Panarin line. Panarin, Mika, and Lafreniere. But, the second period, there's a stoppage kind of early, about 15 seconds in. The Rangers put a shot on goal. The puck was frozen. But then after this, you've got Trouba with the puck. He passes into the neutral zone. It gets intercepted. And then later in this shift, Andrew Kopp, our old friend, able to steal the puck from Kakko, passes to Kane. Kane fires off the post, and Quick is fast to get on top of it. But again, just not a good start to the second period. And then we look at the third period here. Again, the same five players. Trouba turned the puck over like 6 seconds into the third period, and I don't think it led directly, if I'm remembering this correctly, I don't think it led directly to a shot on goal for the Red Wings, but now they've got an offensive zone possession. And Joe Micheletti, who is usually very positive and, very much of, a homer. I think all, NHL announcers, whichever team they announce for, that's kind of their team, and they're homers to a degree. But he called about, he said they are not defending at all. And that was really on the nose. And for Micheletti to kind of go there and really call out the Rangers, I think that gives you an idea of the quality or lack thereof of the defense that the Rangers were playing on this night. And like I said, the start to the game was not good. The start to all three periods was not good. It has to be better. I think that if I'm in charge of this, you go with the heel line, starting every game and starting every period. I think they've earned it. And if nothing else, at least test that statistic where they're not allowing a goal against, which almost happened again in this game. Early in the first period and early in the second period, Quick was able to bail them out. And one instance, of course, the post bailed them out when Kane put his shot off the post at the start of the second period. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, can somebody on this team, I'm not even asking for the whole team at this point. I'm asking for one player to really come out with some intensity, some fire, some aggression. We just haven't seen it. I'm not saying you have to do anything dirty. I'm not saying you have to take a run at somebody or do what Ben Harper did the other night and just skate into the opposing goalie and knock him on his butt. I'm sure some people saw that going around on social media. We'll talk about that in our next episode too, when we're discussing the Wolfpack. But my God, somebody needs to come out with some fire, some intensity. It just wasn't there. It wasn't there at the start of this game. It wasn't really there at the start of any of the three periods either. And, again, saying all this, it's just so weird. Because anybody that didn't see this game, they're probably thinking like, man, this guy's being pretty tough on this team that won 4-0 in this game. Maybe I am to a degree, but I think anybody that watched this game and has been watching the Rangers over the last handful of games, you guys know what I'm talking about. It just hasn't been sharp, crisp hockey. And in this game, again, a couple of opportunistic goals for the Rangers, and more so than anything, Jonathan Quick, saving the day. That's why they won this game. It's really just that simple. But going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to the possibility of some new defense pairings, which are actually the old defense pairings. I'll explain what I mean and go into greater detail about this in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying right now when you go to join built.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payments today. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get that $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. We'll go ahead and close out today's episode by talking a little bit about the defense pairings, which have obviously struggled in the last two games. Again, you wouldn't know it by looking at the final score of this game, but anybody that watched this game happen in real time, saw everything that went on between the Rangers and the Red Wings, you guys know that the defensemen are still continuing to struggle. And, you know, a lot of people right now, a lot of different fans of this team, they have their own opinion, they have their own viewpoint on who should be with who and who should be in the lineup, who should be out of the lineup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go ahead and lay out my personal preference. If you feel like you'd like them to do something different, then go ahead and let me know in the comments section or wherever it might be. Send me an email. Do whatever you got to do, because I'm certainly open to some ideas given the way these defensemen have played in recent games. They've just been flat out bad. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And the Rangers, of course, these last couple of games here, going with their tried and true pairings and the pairings that, to be fair, have resulted in a lot of wins over the last handful of seasons, but they just haven't been clicking this season. And honestly, at times last year, not really clicking so much then either. But the pairings, of course, are Lindgren and Fox, Miller and Trouba. Those are your top two pairings. That's what the Rangers have done more often than any other combination you can think of over the last handful of seasons. And like I said, it has resulted in wins, but it hasn't been good lately. And then the third pairing, you've got the revolving door that right now is occupied by Zach Jones and Braden Schneider. And I feel like it's time to shake all of this up. I'm hoping that they go back to the pairings that they were using at the start of the season. And it's a little bit different now, of course, because, you know, Ryan Lindgren is healthy, or as healthy as one can be when they've got a fishbowl on their head and possibly might be playing through a broken jaw or whatever Ryan Lindgren has right now. But he's back. And also Zach Jones has been slotting into the lineup over Victor Mancini. And that's a whole other storyline in and of itself. The fact that Victor Mancini is a healthy scratch for the third consecutive games. We'll dive into that a little bit more detail here today if we have time. And if not, we'll get to it in a future episode. But honestly, looking at everything, the lay of the land right now, Ryan Lindgren really shouldn't be playing at all. And I'm not saying this because I think he's this terrible defenseman that certain Ranger fans seem to believe that he is. I don't believe that for a second. But again, he's playing injured. He's got the fishbowl on his head. It's probably very unnatural. He just hasn't really found his legs, hasn't really found his game thus far this season. And when you have a situation that the Rangers currently have, again, Lindgren being hurt, but you're at a good place in the standings. Where are they now? Like 9-3-1 to start the season. You're at a good place in the standings. You've banked a bunch of points against teams that you mostly should beat and mostly have beaten. So you don't really need to rush anybody that might have a broken jaw and, if nothing else, has a fishbowl on his head back into the lineup. I just don't really see the point of that. And I especially don't see the point of that when you have Zach Jones and Victor Mancini, who've both played well and are both ready to go. If you wouldn't have put Ryan Lindgren back into the lineup, here's all the positives that come out of this. Again, more seasoning for Zach Jones and Victor Mancini. They're both still getting started in their NHL careers. You know, Zach Jones, for as long as he's been around, I'm not sure he's even played 60 games. I don't have it in front of me right now, but he hasn't played as much as you might think. And Victor Mancini, obviously just getting started. He's played like 9 or 10 games, you know, so far this season. Neither one of them have ever played in the playoffs. You get them more seasoning, you get them more experience, you get them used to the other Ranger defensemen, and they're ready to go later in the season on an as-needed basis in case, Ryan Lindgren gets hurt again, or Jacob Trouba gets suspended, or this guy gets hurt, or whatever might happen. You might have to plug somebody else into the lineup. I think, having those guys get some games under their belt early in the season when the stakes are a little bit lower than they are, later in the season when you're jockeying to try to win the division and when you're going to the playoffs, obviously. And I realize all the games count the same, but nevertheless, I think this is a good opportunity to get both Jones and Mancini some much-needed experience. On top of that, another reason to keep Lindgren out of the lineup is he's clearly not 100% right now, and you can almost save him from himself because we've talked about how injuries have been something of an issue for Ryan Lindgren basically ever since he's debuted. Again, I've said this many times. I think it's a little bit overstated by some Ranger fans, but he does tend to miss, a chunk of every season here and there. So by keeping him out of the lineup, you're doing him a favor in the long run because he's putting less wear and tear on his body. I mean, he plays such a physical, demanding style. We've talked about before how the Rangers don't want to go long-term with Ryan Lindgren because they probably don't think his game is going to age very well. Well, let's make the best out of a bad situation here. I'm not saying they should LTIR Ryan Lindgren from now until the end of the regular season, like the Knights do with Mark Stone every single year. We don't have to do that, but keep him out of the lineup for a while. He's clearly not 100%. Let him heal the way that he needs to heal. And then when it comes time to hopefully making a run in the playoffs, Ryan Lindgren is a little bit fresher at that time of the season than he typically is. I think that could be a good thing. But nope, they rushed Ryan Lindgren back into the lineup, and I realize, Lindgren at this point, he's a proud player. I'm sure he takes a lot of pride in being on the ice and playing through some pain and everything, but it's just not working for anybody. And there's things to be gained by him not playing. So I've said my piece on Lindgren, but here's some numbers that we got to look at as it pertains to the Ranger defenseman, because there's some people that, I know like some of these, next-gen stats, and these aren't all next-gen. We're going to talk about Corsi in just a second. But I have to thank Hockey Stat Miner on Twitter. These are numbers that I'm about to read here of how the Rangers were doing in the games when Adam Fox was paired with K'Andre Miller and when Braden Schneider was paired with Jacob Trouba early in the season, obviously. And by the way, for frame of reference here, it's not a small sample size. These pairings have played approximately 4 hours of ice time together, just north of 4 hours. So you can't really call it that small of a sample size. I mean, everything's a little bit small because it's early in the season, but these pairings were doing very well together. You look at goals scored when those were the line pairings. Again, Miller with Fox and Schneider with Trouba. The Rangers in that time scored 14 goals. They had 8 goals against. Expected goals in that time were 18-10 in favor of the Rangers. Shots on goal at that time, 156 to 103 in favor of the Rangers. And Corsi was 289 to 220 in favor of the Rangers. So for me, I mean, use whatever stat you want, or you can just go with the eye test, what you've seen these last couple of games. Let's go back to those pairings. If I'm the one in charge here, the pairings for the next game are going to be Miller with Fox, like they were at the start of the season. They had one bad game together, but other than that, I think they mostly did well. Give me Schneider with Trouba. So Schneider's going to move back over to the left side, and give me Lindgren with Jones if we assume that that Zach Jones is going to stay in the lineup over Victor Mancini. And I know those pairings, the one thing that's going to jump out a little bit as being a little bit strange is that you're going to have two defensemen. If you do it this way, you'll have two defensemen playing on their unnatural side. I don't really care. I probably overstate that. We as hockey fans probably overstate that. Everybody, remember when we were all worried about Alexis Lafreniere moving from the left side to the right side, and look at him now, nobody even thinks about it. And it's probably the same thing with defensemen. These guys are more than capable, a lot of them, of making that change. And the bottom line, it was working. So if you are hung up on that, you don't want two defensemen playing, on their unnatural side, you can always put Mancini back in for Jones for a game. Not really big on the idea of scratching Zach Jones right now because I think he's played very well. But you could put Mancini on the right side rather than Zach Jones on the right side. So, it's definitely an option. But I get back to these pairings that were working earlier in the year, because what we're seeing these last couple of games here, that ain't it as far as the Ranger defensemen are concerned. And we might as well go ahead and talk about Victor Mancini. I mentioned this a second ago. The idea that maybe it's time for him to be set down at the AHL. I'm not quite there yet. He has been a healthy scratch 3 straight games. That's not going to destroy his confidence or completely ruin his development. But if this continues, if Zach Jones is back out there for the next one and the one after that, at a certain point here, you got to send Mancini down. You got to let him continue to play hockey. I mean, he can't play hockey if he's in the press box every single night. And of course, Mancini doesn't have to clear waivers or anything like that, so nobody has to worry about that. You send Mancini down. You call up one of these veteran defensemen, I guess maybe Ruidel, you call him back up. Whoever it might be, Mackey, Scanlon. I mean, take your pick. But if you were to do that, then you're probably looking at a situation where Zach Jones is in the lineup every single night. And there's probably a lot of people that want that. And I think it might be time to give that a shot too. I feel bad for Mancini because I think he's played well too. But if there's not a role for him, if you're not going to put him in the lineup for any of these games, then he's got to keep playing hockey. And with that being the case, you got to send him down to the Wolfpack at that point. But these new pairings, which are really the old pairings that I'm suggesting here, it accomplishes a couple of things. And again, just to kind of reiterate the pairings, if it's up to me, it's Miller and Fox, it is Schneider and Trouba, and it is Lindgren and Jones. And if you do it that way, first of all, this one's obvious. It breaks up the current pairings that are struggling so badly. The third pairing will still be intact, but they've probably been the best pairing for the Rangers over these last 2 games combined here. So that's not really a problem. You break up the current pairs that are right now struggling. It also gets Ryan Lindgren out of a top 4 role. And the everydayers, the people that have been listening to this show for just this season or several seasons, whatever it might be, you guys know I'm a big fan of Ryan Lindgren, but he's not playing like a top 4 NHL defenseman right now. And part of that is, I think, the injury and the fishbowl that he's got on his head. But the bottom line, to me, you got to get Ryan Lindgren out of a top 4 role, and you've got to reduce his minutes, at least for the time being. Once he heals proper and finds his game a little bit, I'm completely open to the idea of putting him back up there. But right now, I got to have Ryan Lindgren on the third pairing. And the other thing that these pairings do, the ones that I suggested, and this might be the biggest one, it gets K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba the hell away from each other. I don't know what it is, because we have seen this pairing do well in the past. When K'Andre Miller first made his NHL debut, he was out there with Jacob Trouba, and those two ever since then have spent the majority of their ice time basically connected at the hip. They've been a pairing, and at times in the past, they've been a very good pairing. Not so much recently, though. We saw them scuffle last season, and then they made a change down the stretch last year. They put Schneider up on the second pairing with Miller, and they put Trouba down on the third pairing, typically with Eric Gustafsson, once everybody was healthy. But the bottom line, when those changes were made, Miller and Trouba both immediately started playing better. I mean, Miller especially. Him and Braden Schneider really clicked, but even Trouba, I thought, started to find his game at least a little bit at that point. As for this year, how do you do it? You could put Braden Schneider with either one of them. You could put Schneider with Miller. Again, we saw that pairing last year. Haven't really seen it this year, but that was an effective pairing for the Rangers at times last season. Or you put Schneider with Trouba, because both Miller and Trouba play better with Schneider than they do with each other. So that's my proposal. That's what I want to see the Rangers do. And that's also another reminder of just how important Braden Schneider really is to this team. But those are my pairings going forward. You guys let me know what you think. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that's lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.